Good morning, guys, and welcome back to Pursuit the Pod. How are you guys doing today on this Tuesday? What has been on my mind so much recently is this topic of balance, or rather imbalance, actually. And there's a couple main ideas with this. And one of the ways that it really started for me was when Michelle Obama said that you can have everything you want in life, just not at the same time. I'm paraphrasing. I think she was on a talk show with Oprah. I don't really know. I looked it up and I think that's what it was. Anyway, she was on a talk show and she said that. And ever since I heard her say that, I've thought about it quite often, that you can have everything that you want in life, just not at once. And I've been thinking about balance and imbalance because as I've thought about it, I've had some pretty imbalanced periods of my life recently. But then when I started to think about it, honestly, there's been a lot of periods in my life that have had these periods of imbalance, like really devoted, really focused on one thing, like almost at the point of detriment, like in college, which I'll get to, of health detriment. But I did do the thing that I'm most proud of, which is graduate from undergrad. And I know that a lot of people do that, and maybe that's not the most impressive thing in the world, but knowing to other people, but to me, it's one of the things that I'm most proud of because I know how much I had to devote myself and focus for those 4.5 years to do that. And all of the cycles of intense imbalance over studying for a physics exam, like all these exams, all this homework, it was very imbalanced. I talked about last week how I think I got less than 500 steps a day because I was so imbalanced to do everything that degree required me to. And like I said, I wouldn't really recommend the way that I did it, but hindsight's 2020 because towards the end, it really started to show in my health. And so that was several years ago at this point. And I think more back to recent times when basically from January to May, I was pretty imbalanced with ultra training. I would run, my weekends would be going, I would love creating my Saturday long run vlogs and, constantly creating videos, and 50 for fuel was like in my brain all of the time. I was really devoted to that. And I was imbalanced in terms of relationship, like romantic relationships. I was not pursuing that. I wasn't reading. I wasn't, calling my family that much. I was really devoted to 50 for fuel and the 50 miler. And then I tacked on the half Ironman at the end. So towards the end, I began training for that. So, before work. And I would get up and do a workout, then work, then do a workout after work. And like that was my life. I also think about, when I was in school, when I was doing my master's and working, like I was pretty, honestly, no, in the last 2 years, I've really become a little bit more balanced in terms of work and working out and other life. But for example, I just remember the reason I bring that up is because, the thing I tend to not really prioritize is relationships and friendships. Like I have my key friendships and I really make an effort to sustain those, but I'm not going out like every weekend or weekdays. Like I'm not meeting up with people. So the friendship side of my life, I know the value of keeping my core people, but I'm not really flourishing in that side of things like I am with other pursuits. And honestly, I'm okay with that. I'm okay because when I think of balance, I think of it in two ways, on a micro scale and a macro scale. And when we're talking about like the macro scale of balance in life, I absolutely believe that a balanced life in terms of seasons of your life leads to a really fulfilling life. Because think about all the cool seasons of life that we can have. And as a whole, if you have a lot of varied elements in your pie chart of your life, you cultivate a really cool, interesting, and fulfilled life. What I've been thinking about this last week is diving more into the micro scale of imbalances that ironically contribute to a holistic, balanced life. And honestly, an interesting life. Because I think what people get wrong, on their pursuit of things is that micro levels of imbalance are, for some reason, a signal that you're doing something wrong. And that's what I want to talk about today. I do not think that periods of your life where things are imbalanced are something to shy away from. As long as, and then here's the caveat, as long as you are keeping up personal minimums of the areas of life that you prioritize. So there's a lot in here. I will start with the prioritization. So you have to think, what are the things that I'm going to prioritize as my personal minimums of things that I know that I physiologically need? Like whether, I can ignore close relationships all I want. If I do, I wake up one day and I feel lonely and sad and I'm not able to do my work and everything because I'm just so sad and I'm so crying on the phone to my best friend who's long distance from me. And I'm like, oh, why do I have no friends? Like, I'm so sad and lonely. And it's like, oh, because you haven't connected with anybody in 3 weeks. So I learned, and this is what I talked about last week, was understanding your natural reaction to things. And when you go too long without something, how your body reacts. So that's one example. Fitness is a priority of mine. So maintaining, you got to identify, you got to prioritize what is the absolute, most important things that I need to sustain throughout these periods of acute imbalance in order to be able to keep going into those moments of a really unbalanced life. And you got to prioritize, because if everything's important, then nothing's important. So that's one aspect of this. And then the next is being willing to really dive into a season of life and know that that season of imbalance is temporary and worth it. It's worth it because focus on something is how you accomplish these things that are extraordinary. If you break down the word extraordinary, like you have to do something that's outside of the ordinary. Doing something that's remarkable requires you to go a little bit outside the bound of your day-to-day life. And the way that I've seen that time and time again in my life and of the business people that I read about and know online, like they had periods of intense imbalance in order to build their businesses. Like Layla the other day on a podcast, Layla Hormozi, one of my biggest inspirations, was talking about how early in her business, she would literally be like, I don't do friends right now. I don't do friends. Like people would ask her to hang out. She said, I don't do friends. Because she was on the order of 23 years old, had on the order of 100 employees. And she was like, these people are depending on me for a paycheck. I need to work. I need to build this business. I need to do this. And it's very fulfilling for her. And so she was willing to devote herself to that pursuit. And I also just finished John Mackey's autobiography, The Whole Story. And he is the former CEO and founder of Whole Foods. And he talks about in the beginning how he literally lived in his very first store, Saferway. And then, as it built over time, it grew into Whole Foods. And then obviously he wasn't living in the store anymore. But the idea of being so devoted to something where you are living, sleeping, breathing, eating your pursuit. These people inspire me because they remind me that acute periods of imbalance, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with devoting yourself. And the reason this has been on my mind so much this week is because the team and I have been working a lot to support a deadline at work. And so, I've really devoted myself to delivering what needs to be done on time. And that required of me this complete shift of, quote, living a quote, balanced life, to basically boiling down my life to waking up, working, get my movement in, work more, eat, work more, go on a break, work more, sleep, work more, like do, like, really devote myself to this. And I think that people, when a season of life demands that of them for one reason or another, they can be like, oh no, like I should not be, quote, working this much. My life is so imbalanced. I'm not hanging out with people. I'm not reading. I'm not cooking. I'm not doing spontaneous hiking trips. I'm not doing these things. And they think that something's wrong with their life. And the reason why you think something's wrong with your life is because you think your life is always going to be like that. And your life is not always going to be like that. Your life is not always going to be this time where you have to work super hard in this thing. Like, you're going to study really hard for the exam, and then the exam is going to be over. And if you hadn't completely devoted yourself to that exam over and over and over again, you wouldn't get the overall good GPA in college. Now, whether that good GPA matters in life is a whole different discussion. And about how much our whole society is based on ego and placing ourselves, like ranking ourselves amongst others. But that's a topic for a whole other podcast. Let's operate under the assumption that getting a good GPA is important, just for the purposes of this discussion. The way that you do that is by devoting yourself to school for a prolonged period of time. And then when we do talk about something like school and college, there's periods of acute stress, in the middle of the semester, and then there's the summer, or even the breaks that we get, the fall and the winter breaks, where the focus is shifted to something else. So even within that entire pursuit of going to college, there are moments of intense imbalance, and then it goes to a little bit more of a balanced life. And so what I'm here to talk to you about today is to not shy away from those periods of imbalance, because that's where you're actually going to accomplish something. Like, I think what people get wrong is that if every day is not balanced, if I think of it like a pie chart of their life, if not every day is 20% like relationships, 20% fitness, 20% hobbies, 20% rest. I think I lost track. I think I only said 4. I don't know, but list 5 total, and there you get 100, and there's your pie chart. I think even if every day and even every week doesn't look exactly balanced to you, to accomplish something, you're gonna need to dip your toe into those imbalanced periods. Now, living in that full time, and so if you're gonna live a life where you're gonna devote yourself to all these cool things, it's really important to maintain, as I said, those personal minimums that it's gonna make sustainable for you to actually go into those periods of life. So I've talked about it until the cows come home of my personal fitness minimum. So you guys probably know by now of what my personal fitness minimums are, but this is something that I wish that I knew in college, was just lifting for 45 minutes every other day, going for a 30-minute run every other day, getting 10,000 steps and doing 30 push-ups every day. Like, just doing that minimum really helps you keep yourself sane as you do dive into these like really acute periods of imbalance. And as I was getting to the end of John Mackey's book, he had this quote that I really liked, and it goes, "I don't believe life is simply about our happiness or pleasure. It's also about discovering and following our higher purpose and contributing our unique gifts and talents in the brief time that we have on this planet as a human being." Then this is my favorite part. "The beauty of a whole life is that those things can all go together." So he's saying that you can have happiness and pleasure and, good times, and life is about discovering and following our higher purpose and contributing our unique gifts to, the planet and humans and everything. And so the beauty of a whole life is that those things go together. Those periods of imbalance lead to a really holistic and cool and balanced on the macro scale of life. Like if I think about my life, I'm quite, like when I think about my life, I like that I'm balanced in terms of the academic side, the career side, the fitness side. Like they're all, but in order to do each one of those, like I don't train for an ultra and work overtime at my engineering job at the same time. You know, I don't get degrees in aerospace engineering and work at the hospital for 24 hours a week, you know? Like I do not, and that's why Michelle Obama's quote really resonates with me, because it's like, you can have everything. You can do everything in life. That's what we talk about here in Pursuit, is doing everything because you can explore who you are. You just can't do it all at the same exact time, which I have to tell myself this too. Like, you can't do it all at the same exact time. But what I'm here to tell you is to not think that something is wrong when you need to work 60 hours a week on something. Like there's nothing wrong with that. When it's focused, when it's accomplished, when it's focused on accomplishing this certain thing, because you're going to be really happy that you devoted yourself to that, and maintain the things that you need to do on a day-to-day basis to keep yourself sane through that time, so that pursuit is actually sustainable for you, especially when we talk about pursuits that are on the order of months and years. Like there's going to be fluctuations of imbalance and balance times in those periods, but if you can keep a constant personal minimum, like we've talked about, that's how you make shifting in and out of these periods of balance and imbalance more sustainable for you. So that's what I have for you today. Now, I am interested is, please tell me if you disagree in that you think that daily balance is actually more important. Like have you yourself or known people who have been able to accomplish things, been able to do so in a balanced state? Let me know, because everybody that I so far, I'm always open to new perspectives. Everyone that I admire and look up to has always had these periods of obsessions and periods of really devoting themselves to something where in the end, that's how they've been able to build something that they're really proud of, or accomplish something that they're really proud of. So that's what I have for you this week. I hope you have a lovely rest of your Tuesday, and I'm gonna go back to work. So bye.